J-Dean is not pro-consumer. J-Dean is pro-monopoly. And that's really what's going on here, is that large health insurance companies have been allowed to create monopolies in this industry. And that's bad for not only the consumer, but the small pharmacist. And ultimately, that's got to be against our antitrust laws. I don't know how it's not. Hi, I'm Melissa Beckett. I'm running to be your Texas State Representative for Gregg, Harrison, and Marion counties. It's very important that we know what our representatives are doing on our behalf and sometimes what they're not doing on our behalf. J-Dean, our current representative, is the House Chair for the Insurance Committee, which means he has full authority as to what bills are talked about, what bills move through, down to the House floor, and what bills die. And today I have a wonderful pharmacist here with me. His name is Kenneth Bain, and he is going to tell us a little bit first about who you are, your background as a pharmacist, and then we're going to talk about some of the bills and how they were treated or affected in the House Insurance Committee this last session.
My name is Kenneth Bain. I have been a pharmacist for 34 years now in a variety of different jobs. I have worked for hospitals, I have worked for clinic groups, and I've worked for independent pharmacies. I'm well versed in some of the different aspects of how these things, the legislation is coming, affects all of those three groups.
And so I was hoping we could specifically talk about, there was a bill that was filed that would have made a significant difference in independent pharmacies and how they operate. But before we dive into why that bill is so important, can you tell us a little bit about how the industry is structured and why it is that independent pharmacists are not actually set up to make money?
Well, the way the industry is structured has been something that started 20 plus years ago with the introduction of Medicare Part D. And you had companies, the biggest one that I would say is the offender would be CVS Health. And others have followed suit, United Health Group as well. They have vertically integrated themselves into the healthcare market. So I'm going to use CVS for an example. They own Aetna Insurance. It's the largest private insurance company in the United States. They bought Caremark and renamed it CVS Caremark. That's the largest PBM in the United States. They have their own retail. They have their own mail order. They have 1,100 minute clinics around the United States. And pretty much if you're in that Aetna or some of the other insurance companies that are contracted through the Caremark PBM, you're locked into that vertical integration. You have to keep all of your business within it. So from the independent pharmacist standpoint, why that is so bad is we have to contract with insurance companies, and in order to do that, we have to go through the middleman, the PBM.
What does PBM stand for?
Pharmacy Benefit Manager.
Okay.
And who owns the PBM that we're contracting with? CVS. So our competitor is the one who is giving us the contracts. And the reason they went after the insurance companies and the PBM after the introduction of Medicare D was that it was intended to be a good thing to have a one-size-fits-all contract. So if you're the big guy, you get the same contract as the little independent mom-and-pop corner drugstore. Sounded good, but what happened was these companies figured out we can weaponize that by buying the insurance companies. So now we're having to contract with our competitor.
Right.
So with that level of vertical integration, they can price out the little guy. Mm-hmm. The independent can be forced out of business because, yeah, they get the same, they're paying themselves the same amount, but they have other places that they make that up throughout the chain.
Right.
So with their healthcare premiums, they can offset that. There is no transparency, so we can't see what that looks like. And that's one of the key things that we're fighting for at state level is an increase in transparency.
Yeah, and so as a result of this big change 20 years ago and this vertical integration of these very, very large health insurance companies or health companies, Lots of small independent pharmacies have gone out of business.
And you can just look at Marion County, for instance. I used to work at the independent pharmacy that was up there, and we were busy. You know, we filled 300, 400 prescriptions a day, and, you know, by all standards, you should be able to make a decent living out of that. But that pharmacy closed down because there's no money, and I mean, you're losing money. So the more you fill, the more you lose is what ends up happening. And so now Marion County does not have one single pharmacy in the whole county.
When it comes to small businesses, it is important that we have an environment that is friendly to small businesses so that people are willing to take a chance and start their own business. And so if you look at Marion County, for example, we had this family that had a small independent pharmacy, and their desire was to serve the community, to serve their customers. But the way the pricing is now set up, they are not able to do so, which is why they closed. Every transaction was effectively done at a loss. And that's not only unfortunate for them, but it's unfortunate for all the people in Marion County who no longer have the local pharmacy. And as a result, when you have one or a small number of entities that are affecting all the different components of the healthcare market, that's going to impact the average everyday person significantly. It's taking away options, which ultimately is going to increase the price to the customer. The fewer pharmacists that we have, and especially if we only have the pharmacies that are in control of all the pricing, that is really going to hurt consumers. If it's not already, it will significantly long term. And so we want to make sure that we have a friendly small business environment. And that's part of where I think our conversation started, is recognizing that there's legislation that hurts small independent pharmacies as well as helps. So let's talk about the bill that was filed that was sent to the insurance committee, but nothing happened. It didn't get a hearing, but it sounds like that bill would have made a significant difference, not only for the independent pharmacist, but also ultimately for the consumer.
Exactly. The bill was seeking to establish a more fair pricing scheme that the insurance companies would have to follow, and that would make it so that the little guy could operate and not have to operate at a loss, because that's the biggest thing. And not being able to compete against the people that own your competitor, own the insurance plans, own the PBM middlemen. We can't compete with that. They're forcing us out of business. So that's why you have situations like what we have in Marion County, where there just isn't a pharmacy anymore.
Right.
They've been forced out by the bigger companies.
And so when business like that is forced out of business in Marion County, it impacts Marion County significantly. When a business like that disappears, we're less apt to attract other businesses to, let's say, Jefferson, for example, which would help Jefferson thrive. And so that's one way it would impact. The other way is when you push small businesses out of the market and you leave only a handful of very large businesses who control pricing, ultimately that will result in an increase of prices to the consumer. And so competition is always a good thing. And when you have one entity impacting price, the market can't function, and it can't create the opportunities, which ultimately create the competition and lower price. So now let's talk about the two bills that actually did make it out of the insurance committee. There's one that ultimately became a law, and there's one that moved out of committee and didn't go any further. Jay Dean is the chair of the insurance committee, so he has full authority as to what moves and what dies in his committee. And it looks like the good bill died, and the two bills that are the most harmful to the consumer and the independent pharmacist actually made it out of his committee. And surprise, surprise, he's received $25,000 from these groups that are benefiting from the bills that moved out of committee. Could you go ahead and tell us a little bit about those two bills?
Right, yeah, he's the last time I looked, I think he had received a little over 25, maybe 26 or a little more. So he's definitely taken a lot of money from these big insurance groups. CVS gave them a lot of money. The company that administers the Blue Cross Blue Shield plans did. United Health Group, which CVS and United Health Group combined are well over 50% of the market share in the pharmaceutical healthcare side of the market. But the one bill that passed, the State Medical Association and State Pharmacist Association were very concerned with it in the form that it was originally written by Jay Dean. We were able to get a lot of changes made to the bill to make it not as bad, but what we saw were that in other states that had similar bills, the insurance companies and the PBMs were using that, they were weaponizing those bills, and anything that came up, they would just, it was a delay tactic, a stall tactic, and they would use that to just kill it. So that was the first thing that we did. We got that window of time reduced. And the second thing that we did was the bill requires a financial impact, a measurement to be made upon the financial impact of the bill. And as Jay Dean wrote it, the mechanism that we were going to use to determine the price, the pharmacist and the doctor said, we don't think this is a very fair thing that you're doing, and that this is going to give numbers that aren't really true. So we were able to make some changes where they will use different data points to determine what the actual impact is going to be. So in the end, this bill has started off really bad. It could still have some potential for misuse by the insurance companies, by the PBMs. So it's something that we're going to have to watch out for.
Right. And what about the other bill?
So the other bill that he authored would create a new product or a new type of insurance that could be sold in the state of Texas. And all of these reform measures that we have worked so hard for over the past 10, 12, 15 years, this new insurance, this new type of insurance plan would be exempt from almost all of those. What our fear was that if that type of plan was allowed to exist in the state, then all the things that we've done to try to chip away at all the bad things that these companies have done and make it more fair for the little guy and to keep the hometown pharmacies open and give people a choice of where they could go would be done away with, because all the mandates would just completely disappear. They would have free reign of going back and doing all the bad things that they have been doing in the past.
So basically that bill was a get out of jail free card for the large companies that...
It would have directly benefited the big insurance companies, the big PBMs.
And not the consumer.
And not the consumer, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let me read you a summary of this bill. So these were called mandate-free health insurance products. And House Bill 139, it was written by Jay Dean, and it would have authorized a new type of health insurance product. And this new product would be exempt from almost all Texas laws that regulate health insurers and PBMs, including those that were intended to protect patients and providers.
That's not a good thing.
No. So a lot of the pharmacists, the medical groups, a lot of these healthcare provider groups, we all got together and said, hey, it's taken us years to get this legislation and you guys can't pass this. And so this bill did make it out of committee, but we were able to convince the lawmakers to vote against it because we were able to explain to them exactly what it would do and how bad it would be.
Yeah. And so there's an example, well, multiple examples actually, two bills where Jay Dean was not looking to protect his constituents. He was doing the bidding for the big health insurance companies. And the bill that would have helped his constituents, he allowed to die in committee. And as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to representing House District 7, my job as your future representative is to represent you, not big companies that don't reside in our 3 counties. And in that regard, Jay Dean let his constituents down. He let down the small pharmacists and small businesses in general. We need a representative who's going to make sure that we are protected and that our rights as consumers and our opportunity to create a business for ourselves, that those things are protected.
Vote for Melissa Beckett in the March 3rd Republican primary. Political ad paid for by Melissa Beckett for Texas.